So my name is Matt Schmidt. I'm the program leader for the professional and personal writing program here at UBC Extended Learning. In a second, we'll introduce some of the team members that are here joining us today. But before we do that, we want to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Obviously, this has been a really massive shift in our collective consciousness, I would say, in Canada over the last few years. UBC is definitely very committed to not only doing the land acknowledgement, but I think taking it deeper and doing the work of decolonizing internally and externally. As anyone who's started this work or involved in this work or has been doing it for a long time knows, it can be confronting and challenging, but it's also very beautiful and rewarding. I think it's interesting that we focus on the land component, because for me, it's a lot about space. And not just physically the land, but making space psychologically, emotionally, socially, historically, ideologically for Indigenous peoples that have been here since the beginning of time. So to create that space and really to honor that we're on these territories, for most of us anyways. You might not be in Vancouver, but you might be somewhere else with that same connection to different Indigenous peoples in your area. So in terms of agenda for today, we'll start with just some housekeeping tips, including introductions, so you get to know who it is that you'll be hearing from. We'll do an overview of the program. So we have more than 20 courses at this point, categorized in different ways to give you a bit of wayfinding about how to explore what potential course taking might be like in the professional and personal writing program area. You'll get to meet one of our world famous instructors, Jennifer Van Evra, who's had, she's been in the program longer than I have, and has been writing for many decades, with some rave reviews and some exceptional stories with learners. So you actually get to hear as well from a couple of her learners. We're very excited to have those learners with us as well, and you'll get a bit of background on them. I'll share a little bit too once we get going. And then at the end, we'll open up for question and answer. And then at the very end, we'll actually send you a follow-up survey where anything that didn't get covered for you, you're going to have the chance to ask additional questions, or maybe if any ideas come up after the session. So we want to make sure that you leave here feeling confident and knowing what direction you want to go. So housekeeping tips. As I said, we won't actually be using the Zoom platform for the questions coming from potential students who are in the audience or who are in the meeting. So what you will actually be using is Slido. So if either on your laptop or on your cell phone, you can go to slido.com. And then after the hashtag, you can just type in writing, very simple, and that will actually take you to today's Slido presentation. Alternatively, you can open up your camera on your cell phone and you can scan the QR code that's there in the bottom right corner. You'll get another chance to scan that in a second. In terms of viewing options inside Zoom, you can click view options in the top right corner of your screen and you'll get the drop-down box. There you can choose the side-by-side option. So that will allow you to look at both the PowerPoint and at the speakers. And you can choose speaker view or gallery view in that same area. So that allows you to see multiple people. So you'll be 4 or 5 speakers that you should be able to see. Or you can just focus on one at a time. And we are also recording this session. So for privacy purposes, though, most of you have your camera, or everyone would have their camera off. So that's probably not too much of a concern, but just so that you're aware, and you will receive a recording of this presentation shortly after the presentation as well. So our team, I'm actually going to get, we'll get everyone to say hello. So we'll start with Sarah Garman-Delara, who is our program assistant. Sarah, if you just want to wave hello. That's Sarah. I don't know if you want to say any words or just she'll get to hear from Sarah a little bit later, actually. Yeah, Sarah, do you want to say something?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Awesome. And then we have Megha Dada, who is a student services rep and also program assistant.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to have you here.
And Jennifer Van Evra, who is an award-winning writer, broadcaster, and instructor on our team for the last 25 years or more. There's Jen. And then we have 2 students who actually are not on the sort of program team, but we'll be hearing from Kristen Workington and from Diane Selkirk about their experiences. And we're going to start by hearing from you guys. So we'll switch to Slido. Sarah's going to guide us through some questions. And this is just for us to get a sense of where each of you are coming from and what you're hoping to achieve today.
Okay, so the first question, we just want to get an idea what your motivation is for coming to the session today. So if you'd like to go ahead and answer as many of these as you like, you can choose from any of these options below. Whenever you're ready, you can start. Great. There's more at the bottom. Okay, that was good. So it's like building confidence and writing better at work. Top two. So we'll just move on to the next question here. So we just want to get an idea of what your experience and confidence is with writing. So you can go ahead and answer the beginner to professional, where you are right now for writing. Okay, great. And the next question is, what are you interested in learning about today? You can choose from any of the topics below. So all of the program areas we offer. For the topics we have. Great, that's lots for freelance writing. It's good, Jen. Okay, so
Good. Sarah, can you scroll back, just go back to the first, just to see where the results finished up, where people, and we'll just go through them real quick. So
sure.
1, 2, 3. Yeah, you can just go back. Cool. Okay. So yeah, just to get a sense. So writing better at work, learning how to edit your own or others' work, building confidence, writing publish. Cool. So just to give us a sense, and we had 20 respondents there. If you still want to add your responses later, if you had trouble getting into the Slido, you can always add them after the fact. This QR code there is, or again, it's slido.com and then #writing. And there's 3 questions. And then can you pop to the next one, Sarah? Perfect. So a lot of people at intermediate level, some beginners, some advanced. So only a couple of people, or a smaller percentage, working presently professionally. We do offer that whole range. So you'll see that here shortly when we go through the writing sort of cycles that we offer, or options. And great. Workplace writing, freelance writing, storytelling, copywriting, proofreading, marketing, etc. Fantastic. Great. Okay, that just helps you guys see sort of, who's in the room, what everyone's hoping to learn today, and it helps guide us a little bit as well. Great. So part of the goal today is to orient you to the different courses we offer. If any of you have been to our website, or if you started doing that work of like looking for a writing course, there's obviously a bit of a spark, like something is drawing you to being here. I'm sure everyone here who's in this panel who wants to share is probably a pretty avid writer, or at least passionate about the area, the skill, and what it can provide. So it's a suite of courses I think we're very proud of, and it's something that's still evolving and growing. And there's some sort of long-standing, strong areas, and there's some burgeoning areas of growth for UBC. And each of you is sort of part of this journey. And the essential skill of writing, I think, has probably never been more important than it is right now. As someone who has a background in writing, I used to also teach writing here at UBC, academic writing. It's always sat really close to my heart for what it gives you in terms of the ability to make connections and to share ideas and to communicate. So that's kind of really at the heart, I think, of what most of our courses, or all of our courses, do. They connect us, they help us communicate, and they help us share ideas in a really powerful way, I think. So we're presently offering over 20 different courses. We're excited about all of them, and we've kind of grouped these into 4 unique areas. You can move within a single area, or you might be drawn to a single area, or you might move across areas. So it's not like it's something that you're sort of restricted to. So the first area is what we're calling, or we call, foundational writing courses. So these are, for the bulk, fall into what you would see on our website as the Writing Well series. So who are these for? They're for everyone. So you could be a beginner, intermediate, advanced, or professional. And the underlying principle or theme here is that you're looking to build confidence in core writing skills. So obviously core writing skills, that might have a different definition for different people. For us, we're broadly calling that grammar, style, composition, plain language, which is a burgeoning, very important field for communication purposes, storytelling, and editing. So you'll see courses in all of these categories in this area. So we've done sort of our best simplify in chart form, so you can see what it is that we offer. So we have our Writing Well grammar course, which focuses on the building blocks of grammar. This could be for, from a very beginner level to an advanced writer who kind of wants a little bit more to hack into some of these skills. Style, which looks at how that grammar comes together to make compelling and easy to read and impactful composition. Process and practice, where you actually lean on the skills of some really established writers and go into some deep analysis of what skills and tactics they use and how can you incorporate that in your writing. So you're building out voice and you're building out composition capability better there. Plain language, how do you make it simple, succinct, clear, and impactful? Storytelling, this is an area that's really growing, I think globally, and also just there's, especially after the pandemic, like there are a lot of stories that we all have now realized we want to tell. And we have a whole host of courses that deal with this. And this one, Writing Well Storytelling, is the basics. You actually start with a six-word story, and then you learn, like, you can tell a story in 6 words, which is kind of amazing. And then you learn what is the art of storytelling and how do you build it out. And this is as a sort of as a skill foundational understanding of what storytelling is as a skill in your writing. And then of course, copy editing, proofreading. This is an introductory course, but it's very detailed, and you'll learn how to look at your own writing and at other people's writing. So these are all skills-based, they're foundational, and they can apply at any level of your writing career. People dip in and out of this area and might come back to it. They might, oh, actually, I feel like I want to understand stories better. Okay, so I'll take this course and get a little bit more deep into the understanding of the utility, location, purpose, and function and structure of stories. So you're going to get a lot of information in a short period of time because we're trying to sandwich a lot into an hour. You can always come back and review this recording, and you can follow up with us. We're happy to answer questions at any time after the workshop as well. So you'll have the contact information. We're very friendly, I think. So feel free to avail yourself of that. So the next area that we offer is writing and communicating in the workplace, which it seems like there's a large interest in this group, which is amazing. This is, I think, for everyone in a way. This is for anyone wanting to build confidence, nuance, and impact in the workplace. It's more than that, but that's kind of the key. It's like, we want to know that we're saying things or writing things well, conveying all the depth of meaning that we're able to. And then we want to know that that's going to do something, that we're either going to be heard, or we're going to be able to transform something, or we're going to be able to join the dialogue, and that we feel kind of included and contributory. So the core foundation of this area is writing well for business and writing well for business advanced topics. If you go to the website, you'll see you might gravitate toward the first level, or you might gravitate toward more the advanced level if you're more on the sort of advanced or intermediate side of writing already. We have a course called Write and Deliver Effective Presentations and Briefs, which is delivered by like a long time continuing educator who is a pro in this area and has worked really closely through with professionals in Ottawa, actually. So really looking at this idea of like communicating at all levels of an organization. Storytelling for organizations, which takes the principle of storytelling and then it says, why is this important at work? Why is it important as a manager? Why is it important as a teammate, as a colleague, as a supervisor, as a CEO? Like, why should we care about stories? When is it that we overdo them? When is it that we underdo them? And how do we find that sweet balance of maximizing the potential of stories and types of stories? And then again, the Writing Well Foundational series, it all intersects here as well. So all of those courses we just saw also apply in this area. And then it seems like there was a ton of interest as well in this group for this, what I love this area. I mean, as someone who does a lot of sort of creative and personal writing as well, freelance writing, self-expression, self-publication. This is for anyone who has a story, a perspective, an idea, or a journey, like some kind of transformative thing you've been through or are going through, and you want to explore, develop, and share that with an audience. So these courses will teach you, how do you get in there? How do you connect with the genre, format, style that's for you, and then how do you transform that into something that can have an impact beyond just like, I wrote this thing and it's sitting in a drawer. I mean, nothing sits in a drawer anymore, really. Probably you're writing on a computer, but it's sitting in a file. Or maybe you do write by hand. I mean, there's still a lot of journaling and this kind of thing that happens, right, by hand. So we have a ton of courses here. It's definitely a growing area. All these are growing areas, but we have, Jen's going to go into more detail, so I won't do too much here, but freelance writing introduction, freelance writing interviewing, freelance writing nonfiction workshop, which is amazing. It's more of a smaller group where there's tons of peer feedback. I think the other two include a lot of feedback as well, but this is more of like a peer and direct support from the instructor workshop style for writing that you're already working on. Another course Jen is offering as well is capturing family histories, personal stories, which again, after the pandemic, COVID, we know that there's a ton of beautiful stories, information, tales from people that we love that we want to make sure we capture and we share those and we have those in perpetuity. Food and travel writing. So if you're going around the world, you like tasty things and you're like, I want to tell people about them. I want to write an article. I want to write a book. I want to share my experiences. So we have our teacher in that area is a veteran in that field and has two versions of a book, two editions of a book specifically about food and travel writing. Writing your blog. You want to understand how to do a blog for business or personal reasons. This would be the course. And then a latest addition to this area is self-published, brand and market your book. And this is, I think, 2 or 3 time best-selling self-published author on Amazon. Pia Edberg, really incredible background in marketing. I understands the fusion of your story, your experience, and your book and how that relates to your readership, your market, and really preparing you to go out there, not be afraid, and really make your dream come true. And she believes that everybody can publish, everybody who wants to publish a book can publish a book. This is a really incredible person that if you're interested in that course, you should definitely consider it. And then finally, writing skills for marketing. So this is for writers who write for marketing as a primary role, or it's a primary function of their role. So you might literally be like, I write for marketing, like that's your job. Or like these days, you have a job where like it's 80% something else, but then it's 20% you also do the writing for the marketing, right? Like this is a very real thing that I think a lot of us experience where there's an overlap between functions and roles. It's also for writers who maybe you're already working in this field and you want to actually formalize your skills a bit more. So maybe you're in that latter group where suddenly your role there's been a slow creep, there's more and more writing that you're involved in at work, and you want to make sure you have the right skills and you develop the right tools. So that could involve the large suite of courses or specific skills within that. So journalism skills, which Jennifer will tell us about, storytelling skills, which, you know, Arthur and also Jennifer and Dawn, and it's sort of overlap. Storytelling is a broad skill. Web content strategy, Rob Matheson teaches those courses. So just dropping some names, but you'll see everyone has bio on our website as well. You can click and explore. And this is also for writers who want professional and or peer feedback. So this is huge. You get to a point and you're like, I don't know, am I doing this right? How can it be better? You want to be with people who are focused on the same and with an instructor who has lived ongoing industry related experience, which is, I think, one of the most important things that our program can bring to the table for learners in this area, is that it's a living environment with professionals, both at the student level and the instructional level. And everyone knows that learning is a journey that never ends, right? So, and these courses include writing for content marketing, copywriting introduction, so learning about the basics, foundations of all types of copy, writing for the web and digital media. Why is it different? Like, why is writing on the internet different than what writing was before when we were, you know, writing for magazines or whatever that were print version? What's the difference? And how do you have to view your reader differently and how you write? That's a very sort of pivotal course. And then beyond this, so understanding how does a website function and how does content on the website function? So this might be as your job has evolved, you might realize realize like, oh, wow, we have tons of content now, and we don't know how to organize it. And often people get bumped into that role, or they were originally, let's say, a copywriter, or they had responsibility for the web writing for their organization. And then now they're also being sort of forced, or they're forward thinking and want to be more responsible for web content strategy and managing how that strategy is rolled out and who's responsible for what. These are all really exciting courses, and I've worked closely with the instructor on these, so I know quite a bit about them. And it's that field isn't necessarily my specialty, but sort of secondarily working with the instructor, seeing how exciting that area is. And then, of course, we have these other courses that will feed into this area as well, which is copy editing, proofreading, and again, freelance writing, introduction, and interviewing, which Jen's going to give us more details about, and storytelling for organizations to build further those skills of storytelling and journalism. So we're going to pass the mic over to Jen, who's going to give you a bit more detail.
That's great. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. It's great to see such a great turnout and so much interest in these writing classes, which, as Matthew said, I've been teaching in the department for 22 years now. It's been a while, so things have really evolved over that time. At the time, it was all on campus, the courses, and slowly moved online. But I thought I would just start by telling you a little bit about myself, and then tell you a little bit about the courses that I offer. And then I'm happy to take any questions from anybody after that as well. So as Matthew said, my name's Jennifer Van Evra. I've been a Vancouver-based journalist and writer for over 25 years. I've written for a lot of different publications, for the Globe and Mail, Condé Nast, Harvard Business Review, Vancouver Magazine, Mother Jones, all kinds of different newspapers and magazines. I've also written for a lot of major nonprofits, law firms, universities, other institutions. And then my other main gig was I was a radio and digital producer at CBC for 22 years, just left earlier this year, and worked on both local and national programs, including Q with Tom Power and The Current with Matt Galloway, Sounds Like Canada with Sheila Rogers, On the Coast, and many others. So, and then privately, both at CBC and outside CBC, I've also worked as a podcast producer and have worked on a range of podcasts. So I kind of divide my time between audio world and writing world, although the audio world is as much about writing as the actual sort of digital and print worlds are. So it's just a different form of writing for audio. And then I've taught in this program for over 20 years. But the most important thing I would say to take from all of that is that, like every other writer, I started from scratch. So I had no idea how to develop story ideas or structure articles or properly tell stories or work with editors. I think when I started, I didn't even know what an editor was. And my early attempts at writing were feeble at best. But I took a few courses, and sort of brick by brick and story by story, I built a career. And so that's what I wanted to sort of emphasize, because I think sometimes we read people's bios and we go, oh gosh, how did, that seems so far away, but it's really not. And I've had a lot of students who have since gone on to build entire careers around writing. And I don't take credit for that. That's all theirs, but just to say it's possible. So Matthew, if you could go to the next slide, if you don't mind. I think one thing I always say is that effective writing and interviewing is more important than ever. So people are reading more than ever, scrolling on their phones all the time, reading articles on their phones and tablets and things. And we communicate by email and text. We read articles on our phones. We post on social media. Organizations reach audiences through blogs and websites. We listen to podcasts. It seems writing has just completely gone through our whole lives now, that it seems like we're sort of reading all day, every day. And then the next slide, but there's a but. That's the good news for writers. The market is much more fragmented. As you all know, there are a million different podcasts you can listen to. There are a million different publications you can read. And so poor writing and poor production really loses people's attention very quickly. So the quality has to be very high. Also, people's attention spans are shorter because there's so much choice. I think people bounce around a lot more. We're used to, you get 2 paragraphs into an article, and if you don't like it, you just, go to the next one. It's or click a channel or go to the next podcast. And so there's that sort of squirrel effect where people can just sort of take off in another direction. So poor quality writing really does lose that attention quickly. And so over the course of my career, I've really learned essential strategies for developing and telling stories, and whether they're in articles, in podcasts, in personal histories. And that's what I like to share in my courses so that students can do really great work and capture people's attention. And I like to tell my students that I got my PhD from the School of Hard Knocks, so that you don't have to. I hopefully can give students a lot of tools so you can bypass a lot of the mistakes that I made and that others make when they're first getting started. So I want to give you a brief overview of the courses that I offer. So thanks, Matthew, for that. So the first is Freelance Writing Introduction. This is a class that's been going for a very long time. And it really began as a class about how to write for newspapers and magazines specifically, but freelancing has changed dramatically over the past couple decades. And now people are writing for their own websites, for company websites. They're writing newsletter articles, blogs, press releases, you name it. And in this course, we really cover the fundamentals of article writing, sort of in all its forms. And it can be applied in a really wide range of applications. So I've had people from everybody from beginner writers who want to write for magazines, to people who do communications works in their companies, to people who want to start their own blogs, sort of a really wide range of storytellers. And so what we cover in the class is we talk about generating, developing, and focusing story ideas. So that's how to come up with story ideas and how to develop them and focus them in a way that makes for good stories. How to structure stories and how to start them. So a lot of effective story writing has to do with how to actually structure paragraphs and how to tell a story, basically, how to make a flow of a story. Also about how to pitch stories. So if you want to approach a website or a publication to pitch a story, how you go about that. We talk about research. We talk about how to do interviews, everything from equipment to strategies for getting the most out of an interview. We talk about working with editors, and we have an editor who visits and takes people's questions. And that's usually a very top tier editor from the industry who you can ask anything you like. It's very helpful. And then I talk a lot about editing your own work and concision, about common mistakes, about marketing your own work, and about the business of freelance. And so the way that works is the course includes written materials that you can access anytime, expert interviews, video interviews with other editors. We have a discussion forum where people can interact with me and other students. And then there's also a 1-hour live chat, a Zoom chat each week. And that is not mandatory. It's more like just where people can come and ask questions. There's lots of chance to ask questions outside of that as well. But it's just a fun sort of social place for everybody to meet up once a week. And there are several assignments where you can apply what you learn, and I give honest and supportive feedback so that people can improve. And a lot of students say their writing improves significantly. And so there's a real mix of people in the course too, from absolute beginners to people working in the field who just want to sort of polish their skills. And I should say too, in the course, I also share student success stories. And so if we can go to the next slide, for many students have gone on to successful publication in newspapers and magazines. The thing that makes my heart sing is when I get the email from a student who says, "Oh my gosh, I got a yes," or "Oh, here's the link to my story," or, here's the whatever success they have. And so in the class, I actually have student success stories where I go back to students who've had success and said, what helped you? What did you learn? What would you pass on? What advice would you pass on to the next batch of students about what worked? Others have used what they've learned to do things like start communications companies, write books, launch blogs. People have been published in the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, Globe and Mail, Guardian, all these many publications. I was just saying before we started that I got a note last week from a student who just did her first documentary film. And that, she said, started with learning how to sort of properly tell stories in these classes. There's a fellow who was in the class earlier this year or late last year who had an idea, and I said, that sounds like a great idea for a book, and he just wrote to tell me that his book has been accepted, so he's going to get the book published, which is great. And a lot of it, I think, is just, so much. I think a lot of people approaching writing feel like those kinds of things aren't possible, and I think it's very possible. It's just you need the tools to do it, and that's what I'm hoping to share with people. So I'll go on to the next class. We can go to the next slide. So the next one is the nonfiction workshop. So many students who take my intro classes said it was helpful to write articles for the class. And a lot of students actually get articles that they've written for the class published, which is great. But they often say they want to continue getting feedback on their work after the class ends. And so years ago, I offered a similar course to this on campus where we did basically a weekly workshop where each week people would, a few days in advance, submit a piece of work. I would email it to everybody, and the class is limited to 12 people, so it was a small group. And so I'd email it to email everyone's assignments around, and then we would read them and then give feedback in the actual class. But what the trouble with that is we were doing it every week for 8 weeks, and the problem was people found it was hard to generate something once every week. And so what we're doing is we're actually going to spread the course over 6 months and do meet once a month instead of once a week. So now this is going to be this new online iteration of the same course. And so it's a really good place to sort of polish ideas in writing. Again, people will submit work. It'll be 1 week before the session, and they'll get constructive feedback in a safe and supportive and fun environment. And I know it sounds terrifying, but I promise it's not. Everyone is so scared for the first class, and that I promise everyone goes, oh my gosh, that wasn't that bad at all. You can submit anything from a really rough draft to a finished piece. You can submit the same piece more than once, or you can submit a new piece each time. People submit 4 times out of the 6 months. So you're only responsible for 4. And many people say they learn a lot from getting feedback on their work, constructive feedback, but they learn just as much from listening to the feedback on other people's work. And so it's actually a really good thing that you get more than just feedback on your work, and you can really learn from what other people are doing and not doing as well. And then again, people interact on a discussion forum there as well. And so for this class, you really do want to have a sort of a basic foundation in nonfiction writing. You don't need to, even just having taken my intro class is enough. So don't feel like you need to be anywhere. Again, it's attracted people from beginners to working professional writers. So it's a really wide range of people. So the next slide, the interviewing class. So often the best nonfiction writing comes from the best interviews, and certainly the best radio and best podcasts come from the best interviews. People do interviews for all kinds of things, for newspaper stories, magazine articles, newsletters, press releases, academic reports, for blog posts, podcasts, history gathering. And a lot of people kind of fall into it without any training. So this course really goes in depth into the interviewing process. So the course gives an overview of the world of interviews, and we talk about how a great interview can make for a great story and for much easier writing, and how bad interviews can make writing tougher. We talk about the role that interviews play in articles, so both for color and for information gathering. We talk about how to research and prep for the interviews. We talk about the art of creating questions that elicit information and strong quotes. We talk about the different types of interviews, so news, profile, information, all kinds, and how to adjust your approach for each. We talk about using the right equipment for interviews, and we go into quite a bit of detail on that, and transcription and how to avoid tech pitfalls. I'm a not famous, but notorious tech geek. So I've got all the doodads and things here. So I know a lot about the tech side of things. Getting the most out of your interview itself. So developing a strong rapport with your subject so you can go deeper in your interviews, and how to get through difficult interviews and unexpected curveballs, and then how to weave those interviews into articles. And we also talk about legalities and business of interviews. So it's basically a really, really deep dive into the world of interviewing. And we have, for that class, each week, there is a video interview with an expert in the field. So mostly journalists, but quite a wide range of people talking about how to do a great interview. So Sheila Rogers, Kathy Tomlinson, legendary investigative journalist, all these different people who talking about how to get the most out of an interview. And students always say they love those interviews very much. J.B. McKinnon, who's a quite well-known Vancouver author, is in there too. So lots of people that their advice is wonderful. So that's that class. And then if we can go to the last slide. Sorry, this is, as Matthew was saying, this is a lot of information for an hour, but I'm also happy to take emails from people or have quick conversations if anybody wants to talk any of this through, but this will be available after the class as well. So finally, COVID inspired millions of people to contemplate what's important to them. I think a lot of people got a different view of their lives and relationships. It gave people a sense that life can change quickly. And this course was actually inspired by a neighbor of mine who I helped to care for several years. And at some point, he had bone cancer. He had nobody in his family. His children were estranged. And he had said at some point that he thought about recording his history to pass on to his grandkids, or just to have recorded somewhere. He'd grown up in London during the war and had all these wonderful stories he would tell. And I always thought, oh gosh, I spent so much time with him, but it was always taking care of something or chatting about this or that. And I just kept thinking, oh, I've got to bring my recorder sometime and do that project and get those stories from him. And then at some point he had a bad fall, and he never cognitively recovered. And so his story really sadly died with him. That I put it off for too long. I waited for the perfect moment. I thought, oh, now's not the time. And so it really inspired me to create this class. So to help other people, I have a happier story that's in the class too, that if you take the course, you'll learn as well. So this one really walks through getting your project going first and foremost. So this is to capture family histories, personal stories. It can be a family member that you want to interview, or family members. It can be a neighbor, community members. It can be coworkers, anybody whose story you think, gosh, that just needs to be recorded in some way. So we talk about planning your project, about both the tech side and the personal side, how to use photos, videos, and other mementos to help the project along, different technical options. So we talk about audio, video, and online. So what your different options are. And we also talk about many different options price-wise as well. So basically, I really emphasize that chances are you have in your home what you need already to do sort of a basic project, that a lot of people, I think, get stuck thinking they need to do everything perfectly, but you can do a lot with a cell phone and a lamp and, a little cheap microphone. So we talk about the importance of research and focus. We talk about what to do and not to do in the interviews themselves. Again, how to interview effectively, but specifically for personal histories. And we talk about how to properly back up and name files so that you don't lose those precious recordings once you have them. And we talk about the different ways you can output. So the different ways you could create a book, or you could create a podcast, or you could create a YouTube series, or you could create transcripts, or whatever form that you want the final project to take. And in this course, we also, like the other classes, I include interviews with really top experts. So some of them are John Burns, who used to be the head editor of Vancouver Magazine. He's now with the Echo Storytelling Agency, which is a memoir company. This is literally what they do. People hire them to create memoirs or company histories. We also have Kristen Kozar, who is heads up the oral history program at the Indian Residential School History and Dialogue Center at UBC. So specifically she talks at length about collecting histories that involve trauma. We have Justin Bengry, who leads a master's program in queer history, the first of its kind in the world, who talks about the importance of gathering histories from communities that don't necessarily have the same familial connections down, and how important it is to carry forward stories, not necessarily just through family lines. And we talk about Ramona Marr Ramona Marr is another one who is from the Chinatown Storytelling Center. So she talks about collecting histories from immigrant communities and she's really wonderful, talking about her whole job is to gather histories of people who live in Chinatown, seniors who have seen immense change over the generations. And so they all offer so much wisdom and depth and wealth to the class. So really great to have them too. And I think that's about it for me. Yes, go ahead, Matthew. So feel free to contact me. My email is jennifer.vanevra@ubc.ca. That's one of my 2 dogs who is currently stuck, just had a hip replacement, so he's not in a bit happy in a big field right now, but he's doing okay. But yeah, so I am happy to take anybody's questions after. I think we're gonna go over to a couple of my wonderful treasured students to hear from them, and then I'm happy to take any questions too.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jennifer. I completely concur with Jennifer. Like it's a magical moment. Like every term I will get a few emails from Jen saying, look at this student's publication, or look at this student getting accepted. And it's like, and then usually it's like a cause for celebration on the whole team, because it's a pretty amazing thing. And exactly like Jen said, it's something that people feel isn't possible until they realize it is possible. And then they manifest that, or they create that, right? So that's what the next 2 students who are going to be sharing with us, that's what it's all about. Before I introduce them though, I just wanted to remind, if you guys have questions that are coming up, feel free to keep sharing them in the Slido. So it's Slido, slido.com, and then after the hashtag, just writing, WRITING, and then you can put your questions, and we'll have a bit of time at the end to follow up on those questions. So the first student who's going to be sharing her experience with us, I guess during the course, after the course, is Kristen Warkentin. So Kristen has held a number of different jobs since her bookstore clerk days at university, but she has always wanted to be a writer. As an English and French teacher now for over a decade, Kristen spent her summers and weekends writing and taking courses like Jennifer's, the ones we just heard about. Having freelanced in addition to teaching for 9 years, Kristen is now a communications specialist in the healthcare sector, a job which she loves. While she maintains one client from her early freelancing days, she's looking forward to spending more of her spare time on her own writing and on other creative endeavors. When she has the energy, Kristen loves to get outside in any way she can, and has dreams of turning her cat, Ichabod Crane, into an adventure buddy. We see more of that these days, the adventure buddy cats. She lives part-time with her partner, Jason, and their other fur child, a dog named Theodore, in Bellingham. So please join me in welcoming Kristen to share her experience with us.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's cool to be here. It's really kind of strange to be a successful student story, and it's really cool. When I took Jennifer's course, so much of what she has said was true of me. I wanted to write professionally. I had no idea how. I didn't know if it was even possible. And Jen showed me that it was, and gave me all the tools I need to make it happen. So I made some notes because I have a terrible memory. I'll just go through them, but I've always loved writing. And like I said, I didn't know how to make it happen. Journalism school wasn't really an option for me, and I didn't know of any other options that existed for figuring out how to become a professional writer. So early in my teaching career, like Matt said, I would take a writing course every summer, and I'd practice in my spare time. And one summer I found Jennifer's course online, and I was like, this is the course I need to take. It was the Introduction to Freelance Writing course. So I took that course that summer. I wanted to know how I could get articles published. I needed to know how to get a foot in the door. I needed to know how to structure my stories in order to make them marketable, in order for editors to want to publish them, and I didn't know how. But also the idea of learning from someone who is actively working that field was really appealing. So I was all in when I found that course. So some of the highlights for me when I took the course, the biggest one for me was how practical and clear it was. And it laid everything out in a way that made me think, oh, I can actually do this. This is possible. And now I'm being told how to do it, which is awesome. Receiving feedback on pitches was a big one for me as well in that course. The feedback was just really invaluable. And it's funny that Jennifer mentioned it today, because I have a clear memory of her saying it in this course as well. And this was many years ago now, saying that while it might be difficult, it's still possible to make a career as a freelance writer. And for me, that was really motivating, because there are a lot of cautionary tales out there, and you hear all sorts of stories about publications not even paying writers or expecting them to work for pennies. And you start to wonder if there's any hope at all of making a living at it. And Jennifer was very adamant that there was hope to be able to do that. So basically everything about that course gave me the confidence to start pitching, the skills I needed to do that pitching in a way that editors were picking up the stories I was pitching. So that was really cool. So since that time in that course, my career has shifted quite dramatically. I was a teacher, like Matt said, for over a decade. But since taking this course with Jennifer, I've been able to shift into a writing career, which is what I actually started out wanting to do. As much as I love the students, it was not always the end goal for me. So for a long time, I was teaching part-time and freelancing part-time after taking Jennifer's course. And it's really interesting because at the beginning there, every once in a while I'd email Jennifer and I'd say, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me with that? I have a question. I have no idea what's going on. I felt like a real beginner. And at some point that started to shift and I needed less help, and eventually people were starting to ask me questions and I actually had answers. So that was a really neat journey to be on. So for a while I was pitching magazines and publishing in magazines, and I started to shift towards content marketing and copywriting from there, because I found that working for a set number of clients for me personally made a little bit more sense than having so many editors to work with. That it turned out to be a lot for me. But so I moved into content marketing, and actually the first client I had for content marketing hired me because they were impressed with my article writing abilities and they wanted to use reported pieces to lend some more credibility to their content. So that's where that started for me. So over the years, I've written everything from speaking notes to open letters to press releases, and I still find myself using the skills and knowledge that I gained from Jennifer's class. So it really has carried me through a whole lot. So through my freelance work, I found my current passion, which is healthcare communications, and that's the field that I'm working in now, and a field that I'm so excited to be in, and where a good portion of my job is actually identifying and creating stories to share with our audiences, to kind of help show the importance of what our organization is doing. So as was mentioned earlier, I think in the overview of the different writing courses, that is something that can be very important in a lot of communications and marketing roles, and I use it all the time. Yeah, that's about it for me. Now I'm working as a communications specialist for a healthcare organization. I'm really loving the work, and it's all thanks to Jennifer's course.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Kristen. So we'll move along to our second student sort of testimonial or student share, which is Diane Selkirk. So Diane Selkirk is a Vancouver, BC based travel writer who seeks to get beyond the bucket list and tell meaningful stories about the soul of a place. Some of her favorite assignments have been stories where science, history, environmentalism, or social justice intersect with travel. Her writing and photography for publications, including BBC Travel, CNN Travel, the Toronto Star, and the Globe and Mail, have been recognized with numerous awards. So join me in welcoming Diane.
Hi, Jennifer. So I think I might have been an earlier student in Jennifer's courses. It goes way back to when they were in person at UBC. I was a mom with a little kid at home, and I'd always dreamed of being a writer. Never really saw a path to get there. I was actually working in community mental health, but I wanted to do something different. So I'd taken a couple of writing courses, and I was having a little minor success here and there, but I just wasn't getting it. I know I got one rejection and I was just mortified. I felt like I could never pitch that magazine again because I just didn't really understand the business end of it. So when I took Jen's class, when I loved the feedback between people, because I could start to see myself in other students, and I could see my my sort of missteps much more clearly as she sort of advised people. And I think one of the things I really appreciated was getting a sense of the business of freelancing. That was the part that was really missing for me. I was kind of getting the idea of how to generate stories and that part, but what I wasn't understanding was how it all fit together. And I think online was just really starting to take off at that point, and there was a lot of different types of media happening. And Jen was really, I really appreciated that she was very, as a working journalist herself, she was really on top of the changes that were happening and was really able to advise us as things were sort of shifting underfoot and have continued to shift underfoot constantly. And I think that's one of the big things I took from the class initially that's helped me all along, is that telling the story is a constant, but the thing that changes is this industry, and it's changing all the time. And having that as my knowledge right from the beginning just sort of helped me sort of shift and go. So at this point, I'm a full-time freelancer. I have been for many years. I was at Jen I remember the first time I got a really big assignment. I think it was with Reader's Digest, and I went to Jen and I'm like, they don't know that I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. Like, I don't know what to do now. They believed my pitch. They've given me all these words to write. And I really had bit off more than I could chew, because I was writing about women who gave birth in prison and their effort to keep their kids. And so she talked me through that one, and I always appreciate that, because it turned out into a great story. But I don't know where I was going with that. But anyway, it just gave me a lot of courage that the story itself changed all the time. I went from being a parenting writer primarily, and then an environmental writer for a while, and then a travel writer, because I was traveling. My family sailed around the world, so I was able to support us through travel writing. And all those skills that I got from the class just kept coming back. It was this idea that it's never just one story. I had to pitch constantly. I had to be comfortable with rejection and with just keeping generating ideas. I had to keep reaching out. I had to keep networking, and I had to keep advancing my skills. I still take that. I was writing notes about the interview class, because I'm going to be signing up for that, because that's one of my current struggles. Is I do a lot of interviews and I feel like I could be doing them better. So I'm deeply appreciative. I always we check in with each other every few years, it seems, and I'm always happy to tell her that I'm still going. My focus lately has been, I got involved in Indigenous travel early on. About 4 years ago, I started writing a lot about Indigenous tourism in Canada. Now I do a lot of work for the Indigenous Tourism Association, so sort of crossed over into the marketing side of things, but the skills stay the same. So with a really strong foundation like I got, I feel like I can just keep going. It just sort of gave me a good start and everything I needed. So thank you, Jen. So I think that's me. I'm trying to see if I had anything else, but that was sort of my thoughts.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you to both of you. That is amazing. It's always a treat to hear. And I love the reference, like, to the skills, the longevity, the change, right? Like everything is always changing. So to know that when you're going into an industry, that's what really resonated with me there, is like to have the power to be able to flow with that change, and also to realize that you can bite off more than you can chew, but with the right tools, you'll be able to digest it. That's what jumped out at me too. And that confidence to just take the leap and to know that you're going to be supported to do that. So it's amazing that you guys have built that network together. So we are kind of winding down on our time. So this is an opportunity for questions. So we'll go through the questions that are there, and we'll kind of direct them to whoever's most appropriate to answer them, I guess, of this panel when they come up. And feel free, if you haven't added questions, you're more than welcome to add your questions. Again, it's slido.com. And then there you just type writing, and that will take you to the question and answer survey where you could add your question, or you can upvote existing questions that are there by clicking the thumbs up that's there. So I don't know if Sarah, if you want to run us through the first questions.
Okay, so the first one, excuse me, is for Jen about your interviewing course. The question is, does it also approach interviewing for storytelling for a project of a book?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So it's very broad. It's sort of interviewing for just about any application. It is the writing assignments are sort of more article based, but I always say to people, so when it's about some of the assignments involve taking an interview and putting them into article form. But for that, I always tell people, if you're working on another project, you can really make the assignment whatever is helpful to you. So you can adapt the assignment. So if it is for a book project, you could write, you know, a sample section of a book, or if you're doing interviewing for a podcast, you can send me a chunk of audio from a podcast or whatever form it takes. So absolutely, it's for interviewing in just about any application. And then, like I say, you can sort of adjust the assignments as needed.
Thanks, Jen. Matt, this one's for you. What course would you recommend if someone loves writing, particularly nonfiction, but is kind of lost with no clue what to write about?
I feel like Jen could probably also answer that question, but the one I'm gonna say probably freelance writing introduction, or even the interviewing or capturing. I think there's a lot of avenues there. And if you're looking at understanding like sort of like stories as toolkit, then writing well storytelling would be another one, which is it's not all necessarily nonfiction. It looks at stories more broadly, but I'll let Jen answer if she wants.
Yeah, I get so many people come to my class, and it's lovely where people say, I've always wanted to do this. I just don't know what I want to write about or how to do it. You know, they just know they want to write nonfiction. And then that's so much of the class really is about just teaching people how to generate ideas and how to and to get those juices flowing. And so, yeah, very much when you said that description is, I would say, my introduction, the freelance writing introduction class as well. And I was going to say too, just to Matthew's point, is a lot of the classes do have a little bit of overlap. So for example, if you take the introduction class, you'll learn things that you'll also learn in Don Genova's travel and writing course, or, you know, some things from my class will be in the storytelling class. And but a lot of students take more than one, and they say that they get a lot from they get a lot from both, even when you're talking about the same things. So in Don's classes, the food and travel and blog writing, and so we talk about query letters, but you get different things from different instructors. So I always encourage people also to take the other classes, even if they seem like they might cross over a little bit, because I think each instructor adds their own sort of advice and strategies to the mix. But definitely, when that description, I would definitely advise my introduction class. A lot of people come in not knowing what they want to write about, just that they want to write, and we get people going.
All right, thank you, Jen. So the next one, also for Jen, is it advisable to take the nonfiction workshop class before taking introduction? This is for nonprofit marketing tasks.
Oh, that's great. I would do it in the reverse order. So I would do the workshop is sort of for people. Well, it depends. The introduction really does lay a foundation across the board for sort of all the different steps of writing. And then the workshop course is really to apply those skills and to practice and to improve your writing. So if you want someone to have sort of foundational skills, then it's the introduction first. And then, so typically people do introduction first, then the workshop afterward, because the workshop really is about applying the skills that you've gathered either in the outside world or through that introduction class. I hope that answers your question.
So the next question is, is the freelance writing introduction course offered more than once a year? Yes, it is.
Yes, so we typically offer it at the end of January for 8 weeks, and then at the end of April or beginning of May for 8 weeks. So it's usually basically February, March, May, June, and then October, November. So that's the rough dates that they're taught every year.
Just a little housekeeping piece here. Obviously, if you need to jump off the call, we're 2 minutes over. So if anyone who needs to jump off the call, you're more than welcome to, and we will be sending the recording later so you can get the answer to the questions. You'll also get a survey sent out to you where you can ask additional questions that maybe didn't come to mind now and that come to mind afterward. And of course, you can reach out. Jennifer had shared her email address there, and you'll also have the program email through correspondence. So we're always happy to answer any additional questions, and you can leave if you need to.
Yeah. And I'm happy to stay too for now if people.
Okay, so the next question is, does the order matter between process and practice and plain language in the Writing Well series?
Yeah, definitely not. So if you're like, let's say you're coming in, you're already, you have like an intermediate level or whatever. So you're writing and it's come to your attention that you want to understand more of the functionality of plain language writing. You could hop right into plain language. They're sort of tackling two different things. The process and practice course is more looking at overall style and composition. I think they're complementary in one sense because plain language is in and of itself a type of style. So understanding how to use the different tools and strategies that show up in process and practice is sort of an independent learning, and plain language is independent learning, and they can function together to give you a broad sense of the different tools you can use as a writer. So if you want to go straight for plain language, go for it. And if you're feeling like you want to understand more tools and styles prior to taking on plain language, then that would be the pathway to go, but both are fine.
We want to do one more question?
Yeah, we can keep going if
Okay.
If Jen said, yeah.
So the next question, are communication frameworks for an organization covered during writing and communicating in the workplace?
So I'm not sure I understand fully what you mean by communication frameworks, but what I would say is what the courses do cover. So the first one sort of really looks at really getting a solid understanding of audience, subject, tone, and understanding how to use that in the workplace. There's ongoing grammatical development as well as stylistic development. And then you look at developing common workplace communication. So this could include emails. The memo is sort of going out of style, but it's still used in certain workplace contexts. It's often delivered through email, so that's still in there. And then building toward reports. And then in the second course, it goes into more depth about different types of reports, executive summaries, and sort of resolving complex workplace situations, like when you're dealing with complaints or you're dealing with requests, and how to do these in sort of a successful way. So I'm not sure what you mean by framework, but it doesn't necessarily establish like, here's a communication like set for the workplace, but what it does, it gives you common genres and skills. And it gives you, again, going back to the earlier comment about flexibility in like the freelance area, communication is always evolving, right? Like, I mean, we've seen huge evolution in the last 5 years, like even the last 2 to 3 years about what communication it needs to look like, and how that evolution is part of your own sort of the development of your own personal expression. So I would say that this course is keeping pace with that, and is all about giving you the tools you need to know how to communicate properly in the workplace, and you'll see that continuing to evolve. I hope that answers the question. If it doesn't, you can follow up in the survey and just like nudge a bit more if you need more information about that.
Okay, the next question for Jen. Can the intro freelancing course help someone who wants to go on to screenwriting?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes, in the sense that I think and I've heard many students say that they've applied this, it's sort of basic storytelling. So a lot of the skills can get applied into all different areas. And so that sort of very fundamental core, how to tell a story, how important concision is, being very specific, detailed, focused. We go into a lot about the kind of visual elements of writing and stuff. But having said that, screenwriting is a very specific skill. So certainly it's not something we go into in particular in the class. So it's something where I think you would get sort of basic foundational skills that you could apply to screenwriting, but then you would still want to take a separate screenwriting course, I would think, because there's a lot of technical stuff with screenwriting and very specific formatting and dialogue that doesn't exist in quite the same way in my world, although there is obviously interviewing and things. So some of the skills would translate, but certainly not all. And there was something else, the interviewing skills would be good for screenwriting as well, for because of course a lot of times you're doing research and developing characters and things like that. So a lot of times you're interviewing people for screenwriting too. I just had a this isn't fiction screenwriting, but I just had a student who wrote to say that she's just finishing her first documentary, which is really nice. That's something that she says she picked up the skills she needed to do that from my class, or at least that got her started. So that was from the freelance introduction class. So it definitely has applications in the film world, and really anything storytelling related. I think there's a foundation there. Even fiction writers say they got a lot out of the class just for a lot of the basic tenets of storytelling.
Thanks, Jen. So the last, it's not a question, it's a comment about the plain language course on the calendar. It should be February 2nd to the 16th. So it's 3 sessions. I've just changed it. It should show up on the website correctly now. But yeah, there aren't any other questions.
That's great.
Awesome. Okay, so again, you'll be receiving a follow-up email. You'll be receiving a copy of the recording. So if there's anything you wanted to go back and review, this is for all the participants. And then also there will be that survey that you can add additional comments or questions, and just provide, or receive any further information or guidance about making a selection. A huge thank you to Jennifer, obviously, for being here, for everything that you constantly are contributing to your students, to the industry, to the program, just always sharing your incredible skills and light with everybody. So really happy to have you here today. Thank you both to Diane and Kristen for sharing your experiences, which I think sort of is also part of that same tradition of sharing that amazing energy and excitement. And like, I'm inspired. I'm like, I'm going to take that freelance writing course. So thank you. And also, of course, to Sarah and Mega for helping to put together the webinar today, for helping with the technical bits, etc. We're 3 years now into the pandemic, or I guess we're at the end of the pandemic, and needing to master all of these things, and it does take a team to do that. So super huge appreciation to everybody for all of your work and contribution today, and for everyone for showing up. We appreciate that so many people came out, they expressed their interest, they took an hour out of their day. This is really for you, and we want to be here to support you. We want to be here to travel alongside of you, I guess, as you kind of sort out these things and figure out what direction you want to go, what skills it is that you need, and to build that passion, that confidence, right? It's like, this is something that in a way, I think is for everyone, and it does take a bit of courage and a bit of initiative to get started. And I think you've done the hardest part by being here, taking that initiative, and we look really forward, and we're very excited to seeing you in a class and to answering any further questions and to being part of your journey as a writer. So thank you.